First, we have Matt Mehalik. He serves as the executive director of the Breathe Project, a coalition of local residents, environmental advocates, public health professionals, and academics advocating for healthier air for the Pittsburgh region. From 2007 to 2016, he served as program director for Sustainable Pittsburgh. Matt teaches environmental policy and community resiliency courses at both Hines College and the School of Social and Decision Sciences at Carnegie Mellon University since 2008. He's written multiple peer-reviewed publications in sustainability, design, and education, and has co-authored Ethical and Environmental Challenges to Engineering with Michael E. Gorman and Patricia Werhane. Matt's PhD is in Systems Engineering from the University of Virginia, go Virginia. He serves as the chair of the Board of Trustees of Phipps Conservatory in Pittsburgh. And with that, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for being here to the end of the day today. We want to do this like in 10 minutes. We got to answer this question of what does it mean to win on air quality in our region. So to answer that question, whoops. Okay. So yeah, I'm with the Breathe Project. To answer that question, what are the wins? There are different ways we can think about it. So one is looking at how are we doing on air quality versus standards. What do health standards say? What do regulatory standards say? Then we can also ask that question, how are we doing relative versus other places in the country? And then you can also answer this question, well, how are we doing now versus some time in the past? And then there are also many complex things that go into the systems that affect our air, and what are we doing making changes to improve how that complex system is set up. So I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly in 10 minutes and then be happy to answer questions. So versus standards. So many people fought to get the annual average fine particulate standard changed to 9 micrograms per cubic meter of air in the year 2024. There were public hearings. It was a really big lift. I am happy to say that Western Pennsylvanians consisted as the largest group of commenters on this rule that the EPA moved forward, and their stories are what won the day, and we got that standard set. But we're not meeting the standard. So looking at our official air monitors in the region, at least half of them in Allegheny County are nowhere close to meeting the standard. And then for folks over in Beaver County and parts of Westmoreland County, Washington County, we're walking right on the edge. And then these are all the areas in the country in dark green that are not in compliance with that standard. You can see that most of the country is able to meet that new standard, but we're in Allegheny County, one of these places that is not. And then this is a model the EPA ran saying, okay, in the year 2032, which areas are projected to meet that standard? And you can see Allegheny County is still one of those places where they don't think we can do it. So we're not really winning when it comes to meeting air quality standards. And I will say the 9 microgram standard is above the World Health Organization standard of 5. And there is no protective lower bound for exposure to fine particles. So, you know, we have some challenges ahead of us to meet these standards. We haven't really won there yet. The Lung Association always releases their air report based off of air quality standards, annual average and daily standard. And Allegheny County gets Fs for particles and a D for ozone. So versus standards, we still have a lot of work to do. Now, starting to compare region to other region, the Lung Association for Greater Pittsburgh, this is like 32 counties in our regional area. We're ranked 50th out of 228 metropolitan regions, 26th worst for 24-hour particle pollution, and 19th worst for annual particle pollution. So compared with other places, we're doing we're not doing where we need to be right now. If you take the 8 air quality monitors in Allegheny County and average them and compare that average to the averages of all other metropolitan regions that have monitors in the country, which is about 800 or so, we're at about the 23rd percentile, where New York City's at the 52nd percentile and Boston at the 84th percentile. So if we're looking not versus standards, but versus other places, we're still kind of lagging. And if you put the 8 monitors of Allegheny County mapped where they rank, we actually have one monitor that's worse than about 95% of all monitors in the country. That's the Liberty monitor in the Mon Valley. So folks in that part of our region breathe air that's worse than about 95% of all people. Okay, another way we can look at this, so that's monitored data. We can also look at it from emissions inventory. So this is, and then this is comparing present to past. So this is all greenhouse gas emissions emitted by all industrial sources in Allegheny County from 2012 to 2022. And you can see one drop happened around between 2014 and 2015. That's when Belfield Boiler coal plant was closed. And then you see a drop happening between 2021 and 2022. That's after batteries 1, 2, and 3 of the Clairton Cook Works were closed in Allegheny County. And then these are the major sources of greenhouse gas emissions in the county. And you can see, the Egger-Thompson plant being the largest source. That's the largest circle right there on the Mon River. And then up along the Allegheny River, the Cheswick Power Station. So that one is just closed in 2023. So we should start seeing some improvements there. And, if we track greenhouse gas emissions of all industrial sources, there's about 8.3 million tons of CO2 emitted per year in Allegheny County. Half of it is just at the U.S. Steel Egger-Thompson plant. And that's why we pay so much attention to steel plants. If you look at just those facilities and their greenhouse gas emissions, they've actually gone up over that period of time. So we're not winning there, but we're working hard. If you look at particle emissions, 76% of all particle emissions in Allegheny County come from the U.S. Steel facilities. So that's why it's such an important thing for us to pay attention to legacy steel industry in the region. And all of this is background. So everything you've heard earlier today about additional emissions from the oil and gas infrastructure, all of that is a layer on top of what's going on here. And those particle emissions haven't really changed much over a decade either, although you see the steep drop after 2019. That is the closures of batteries 1, 2, and 3 of the Clairton Cook Works. And they've just closed battery 15 at the beginning of this year, so we should see another drop. And so comparing our region to the past, when I first started doing this work in 2014, we were at the 12th percentile. Actually, a few years before that, we were at the 7th percentile. So, we're better than what we were a decade ago. We've gone from the 13th percentile to the 24th percentile. Most of that is because of the closure of old coal-fired power plants in the region and upwind. So that is kind of a win. We are winning, it's better. Let's see, this is just showing the distribution in 2024 of what our air looks like. And if you do that on a breakdown of number of days per year, you can see, well, 2024, all the data isn't in yet, but you can see, there seems to be fewer orange and red days, but there's still a large number of yellow days. So we're getting just a little bit better. And then if you track us to see how many times per year we appear in the top 10 worst or the #1 worst airshed for at least a period of the day. You can see that, about 9%, 9 to 10% of all days, we're the #1 worst airshed since they began tracking of this in the year 2021. Although last year was much better, we were about half that, 5.2% of all days. And then being in the top 10, our region was about a third of all days historically, and last year is 25% of all days. So we are incrementally improving. So even though that might seem like small progress, it actually is moving in the right direction, and it actually results in fewer deaths in our region. So the last thing I just want to talk about here is progress. So when I first started doing this work, we weren't even able to meet with people in Clairton because there were no churches that would allow us to meet. There were people who weren't willing to organize against U.S. Steel and take them on. Over the past years, we've done a lot of work to help support community voice, and that's who's shown up to get the changes that are happening in our regulatory system. And as a result of this work, we have a new health department director, we have a new board of health, and all of those folks are now helping to crack down on the emissions problems that we have. There have been many, many heated hearings where people have shown up and expressed their voice, and people are a little bit tired about that. We have sent letters to the regional leadership asking for changes so that people are not, health harms are not the center of the work that's happening. So if I were to just, summarize some of the wins from all the organizing work, there were closures of the worst polluters over the period of time. The Shenango Coke Works, Clairton Batteries 1, 2, 3, and 15, new director and board of health, new standards. The EPA has been working with us to reject bad permits, and they haven't allowed those to go through. And then one thing is we headed off the county's attempt to claim that our county is in compliance with particle standards from 2012, and that would confuse everybody. And so we managed to forestall their ability to confuse everybody. And I'm happy to answer more questions. We'll move on to the next presenter, so thank you.